I would like to say that what I'm going to show you next is based in my Marine Corps history, but I can't. It's based on Army history. It's called Rule 13. And instead of me espousing it to you, I'm going to let the gentleman that introduced it explain it to you. But there was a gentleman back in the 90s by the name of Norman Schwarzkopf, big Texas guy. And he was a general in the Army, and he was in charge of Desert Storm, which is when we kicked Iraq out of Kuwait, when Saddam Hussein came in and was messing with Kuwait, and we went over and we kicked him out in the space of 100 hours, fourth largest army in the world. I got a chance to hear Norman Schwarzkopf speak, and I took in a full spiral binder because I was going to take so many leadership notes from him. It was going to be, I'm going to need all the paper. I got two things out of it, and that's the first pillar. So let General Schwarzkopf explain to you Rule 13.
I was a brand new Major General. I just been promoted to Major General. That was the good news. The bad news was I got assigned back to the Pentagon. Walked in the Pentagon, and they made me the #2 man in charge of personnel for the United States Army, Active Reserve, and National Guard, about 4.5 million people at the time. I'd been in my job 1 week, and I came walking to the Pentagon. My boss comes walking out of his office with a suitcase, and he says, Schwarzkopf, I'm heading for Germany. I'm going to visit the troops over in Europe, and then after I visit the troops in Europe, I'm going to swing over to the Far East, and I'll visit the troops in the Far East, and I'll be back in about a month. And he picked up his bag and walked out the door, headed down the hall of the Pentagon, and I absolutely panicked. I ran out the door behind. I said, wait a minute. I have been here 1 week, for crying out loud. What am I supposed to do if the Chief of Staff of the Army calls, or the Secretary of the Army, or the Secretary of Defense, or some dumb politician from over there on the hill calls? What am I supposed to do? And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, Rule 13. I said, yes, sir, Rule 13. Do you mind telling me what Rule 13 is? And he said, sure, Rule 13. When placed in command, take charge. When placed in command, take charge.
Simple enough. When placed in command, take charge. Now, as we talk about being placed in command, it's important to understand that we're talking about two scenarios here. There was General Schwarzkopf's scenario, where he was assigned a job, was sent to the Pentagon and said, you're the new assistant dude in charge of manpower. They put a star on his shoulder, they made him a general, and said, you're in charge at this point. He assumed command formally. And that's one of the ways that you can be in command. You get promoted into a new position. You become the manager, you become the leader, you become the coach, you become the teacher. Nobody knows you. This is day one. And you're going to walk in and introduce yourself to your team in some manner. The assumption of command. This is not usually a crisis situation in the civilian world, even in the military. We normally put on our best tie, we put on our best outfit, we shave and everything and get a decent haircut, which is not what's happening here. And we go in and we meet this new team. There are some important things to keep in mind, but one thing to keep in mind is this is not a crisis situation. No one's going to live or die based on this meeting, but your leadership and how you assume command may affect how effective as a leader you are. So it's kind of an informal meeting. It's similar to going to a networking. Consider going to a networking session. And there's all these people, and you're yakking and talking and meeting people and handing out business cards, and you meet somebody that could be a client. Okay, this is a potential customer or somebody you can work with. Well, you might talk a little bit at this meeting, but the first thing you do when you get out of that networking program is to connect with them. And frequently it's, hey, let's meet for coffee and get to know each other a little bit better. Well, that's the analogy I'm going to play from the standpoint of taking charge when you're assuming command. You're going to have coffee. And as a result, we have an acronym. We have an acronym for when you assume command. Formally, but under no stress. So the first C in coffee stands for confident. When you're going to take charge, obviously, I think it's without a doubt saying, go in there confident. Now, this might be a bit of a challenge because normally when we take over a position of higher responsibility, it's not something we've been doing for a while. Okay, it's something that's new to us. I was a territory sales representative, but now I'm going to be a regional sales director or a regional sales manager. Okay, that's a lot more responsibilities. Instead of just my territory, I'm going to be taking over the leadership of 8 territories all over the Eastern Seaboard. If there isn't any self-doubt there in you at all, I would check your pulse. But what you need to be confident about is that the person that appointed you into that position knows you don't have all the answers, doesn't expect you to have all the answers, but knows that you have the ability to learn. You have the ability to develop, and that's why you were selected for this position. I had the great honor and good fortune of being a 23-year-old Marine second lieutenant stepping in front of their platoon for the first time. I am now their commanding officer. I've got 44 Marines. Most of them are older than I am, and most of them have been in the Marine Corps longer than I have. I knew I didn't have all the answers, but the United States Marine Corps felt that for some reason I had the ability to do it. So you had to walk in confident. So that's what our C stands for in coffee. Open. It's really important in that situation that you're open with the people you're going to lead. You know you don't have all the answers. They know you don't have all the answers. They're probably more certain of it than you are. There's nothing wrong with addressing that. There's nothing wrong with dressing that openness and being, hey, this is a high stress element. You guys are looking at me. I'm looking at you. I'm going to be your new commander. You're wondering, what's this new butter bar about? I'm looking at you guys going, okay, who are my good ones? You know, just be open with them, with what you're feeling. That's important because it allows them to be open with you. And if the people you're leading are not open with you, we've got a trust problem. Familiar. Before you go see them, you're going to know that you're going to go meet your team, whether it's a baseball team or whatever kind of team it is. If you have the opportunity to learn something about them individually and be a little bit familiar with not only what the mission is, certainly what the mission is, you should know that, but with them individually, it's going to help significantly. Example, a friend of mine, a young manager, goes to take over a sales district again. He's leading 11 people. They don't know him. He doesn't know them. But prior to the time he went in the room to meet them, he got a hold of their personnel information and at least was able to recognize some of their names and their faces. Now, there were some young folks that looked like their pictures in the team book that helped him a lot. Then there are some other folks that hadn't had a new picture taken in 20 years, and he wasn't sure who was there. But simply by addressing one of them by name before you were introduced, Joanne, Bob, Steve, and looking at them and asking them a question or just making a comment, it means that you've shown some effort to get to know them already. So be familiar with as much as you can about that team. You're going to have that opportunity because you'll have advanced warning. Futuristic. That's the second F. What do I mean here? Well, by 2020, we're all going to be flying in cars. Well, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Remember that group that you're speaking to, some of them are superstars, but they have self-doubts. Some of them maybe have not performed as well. Don't worry about the past. Talk to them about where you're going. Talk to them about your vision. Talk to them about the opportunity they have to enhance their performance, regardless of what their performance had been in the past. This is a clean slate for everybody. Okay? I'm not going to worry about what happened in the past. I wasn't here for that. My concern is what we're going to do together going forward. Look through the windshield, not in the rearview mirror. Move in and talk about the future. Enthusiastic, I don't think I need to belabor this point, but I want to tell you a story. A young manager in Chicago is training to lead a team. That's what he's there for. And part of that training is to go out and work in the field with various sales representatives. As he goes out to work the Denver market, he voices his opinion to the people in the Denver market that he really doesn't want to come to Denver. He doesn't ski. He doesn't like the outdoors. He'd rather be in New York. I don't want to come to Denver. That's all they heard. Well, guess where he was assigned? Not only was he assigned to Denver, and now the team is thinking he doesn't even want to be here. It took that individual 6 weeks to get his little butt on an airplane and fly from O'Hare to Denver International to meet his team. What do you think they were thinking from the standpoint of his enthusiasm? The final E is to engage. This is going to be critical as a new leader taking charge of a team that they haven't been in before, or even if they have been in before, is to get those individuals to engage. Ask questions, listen to feedback, ask for opinions. Don't be afraid to say, listen, tell me if you could change one thing. What is the best thing this team does right now? What can we change? Get your people to engage. At this point, if anybody has any questions and wants me to pause, I've been prattling on here for a long time. Any comments, any feedback, anything at all, feel free to unmute and come on. Otherwise, we'll move on.
You're doing great, man.
There we go, some feedback. Thank you very much. We've talked about assuming command. Let's talk about that other situation. That's what I refer to as the happy hour assumption, the happy hour leadership. This is that informal thing. You're with your peers. You're at a business meeting. I don't know where you are. You're just out on the town. You're with a group of people. I define a group of people without a mission is simply being happy hour. But a happy hour, there's no mission to be accomplished. It's just people talking and having cocktails or drinks or glass of water, whatever it is. It's very informal. It's not like sitting down with a new business contact and having coffee. So instead of coffee, we're not going to have coffee for this type of Rule 13. We're going to have drinks. You're all sitting around having drinks. Nothing needs to have happen. There's no leadership required. Nobody needs to take charge of anything until somebody says, anybody hungry? Let's get something to eat. This is one of my least favorite times ever. A group of 6 people with no leadership that want to go get something to eat. At this point, you get to decide. Do I get to take command? Do I want to take command? I don't think I want to take command. I have a very good friend of mine who went into the Outward Bound program. This guy he's a tremendous leader, a great leader, Art Thurnow. He went into the Outward Bound program. And in Outward Bound, you try and reach your summit. You try and expand what you've accomplished. Their mission was to climb a mountain in Leadville, Colorado that goes up to starts at 10,000 feet, goes up to 14,000 feet. Art's a very physical fit guy. He could climb that mountain in a heartbeat. But his personal summit was not reaching the top of the mountain. His personal summit in this experience was just shut up. Don't lead. Because he couldn't get into a situation like this happy hour when somebody says, let's go get something to eat. Art would always step up and say, well, let's go eat. He's always jumping up there to be the leader. And this was his challenge, to just sit back and say, I'm not leading this time. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So you need to decide, do I want to help determine where we're going to go eat or not? Think about your relationship with these folks. I'll give you a horror story of mine. I was a brand new district manager. I was young, the youngest district manager at the time with Pfizer, and they put me in Boston, Massachusetts. They flew all my peers in, all district managers, into Newark, and we're sitting in a hotel in Newark, and the decision was, let's go get a beer. Well, I've been a leader. I've been a leader all my life. And so what does the young kid do? Well, we might as well lead here. Wrong. That wasn't the relationship I was in at the time. With me, I was a leader, and these were my peers, if you will. But the reality was, I was just a new guy, and I didn't have any standing whatsoever, no gravitas to make any kind of decisions. I just should have just sat on my hands and shut up. But I didn't, and was abused for years as a result of it. So determine your relationship with these people. Are you leading them? Or are you not leading them? But that's the R in drinks. Initiative. Back to that decision. Do you want to take the initiative? Or do you want to sit back and let somebody else take that initiative? Maybe if no one's taking an initiative, it's time for you to step up. But it all goes into that decision point is, do I want to even step up here at all? When am I going to step up? Am I going to step up at the beginning when somebody says to have something to eat? Or am I going to step up when nobody wants to step up and be a leader? That might be part of that decision. Let me just stand back and see where this goes. I'm willing to do whatever anybody wants, but I'm not going to sit here all night trying to figure out where we're going to go get something to eat. Knowledge is a big deal. If you're going to assume an informal level of command, make sure you have the knowledge as to where the best place to eat was. I was just in Chicago with a group, and we were working, same principle. It was happy hour. Let's get something to eat. I was the leader of the group. I mean, officially, I'm there being paid to teach them how to lead. Problem was, where was I? Hillsdale, Illinois. I was in a really neat little steakhouse. but I have no idea what's next door. I have no knowledge in terms of where we're going to go. This is not a leadership situation I needed to step in because knowledge is a big part of it. And the last point is situational leadership. In Blue Lobster leadership, we spend a lot of time identifying, not a lot of time, but we identify that dominant type of leader that you are. I believe that there are three types. There's the autocratic leader, the democratic leader, and the delegative leader. How does that apply to happy hour? That's my best analogy. The autocratic leader says, I'm going to go get sushi. If anybody wants to join me, you're welcome, but I'm leaving now to go get sushi. My way or the highway. There's a place for that. The democratic leader says, hey, listen, I'm hungry. Is anybody else hungry? Okay. Nobody else is hungry? Never mind. Sorry I said anything. Or if everybody's hungry, where do you guys want to go to eat? Let's vote. Majority rules. How many people want to go to Mexican? How many people want to go to sushi? Okay, that's that democratic leader. Let me lead here, but let's see where you guys want to go with this. Then there's a delegative leader at happy hour that says, I don't care where you go. If I'm enjoying being with you guys. If somebody wants to go get something to eat, I'm happy to come along with you. You guys decide. Just tell me how to get there. Okay. Same principle situation in any kind of leadership. You may be an autocrat or a democratic leader or a delegative leader. There's no right or wrong. What's right is applying your type of leadership to the right situation. If you've got a bunch of new people, you got to be autocratic more frequently than you got to be delegative or democratic. If you're in a crisis situation and the building is on fire, autocratic works. We're not going to vote in terms of which exit to use. Get out of the building. Okay, well, so we spend a lot of time with situational leadership. But when it comes to that informal assumption of command, just remember, you're just having drinks. Decide, know your relationship, seize the initiative if appropriate, do it now or do it later. Make sure you have the knowledge to lead the people and focus on situational leadership. That's Rule 13. When placed in command, take charge. Well, let me pause for a minute. Any questions, Zach, Liz still out there? Anybody there that has a question or anything to add at this point about Rule 13? Be happy.
Nope,
Yeah,
we're good.
We're good, and I think it applies. It's interesting how it applies to every situation.
It does, and I appreciate that. And leadership is, and that's kind of my point, is that there are people that just go, do I really need leadership? I don't lead anybody. One of the best leadership movies is The Martian. It's all about leadership. And 90% of the movie is Matt Damon walking around on the surface of Mars all by himself. But it's all about the principles of leadership apply to President Trump today. They apply to you tomorrow, leading yourself and everything in between.